Hello everybody, I am Carrie Sheely, and I have put together a little module for you focusing on the now moment. And I would say this is actually a very interesting day in terms of modules, because what I'm doing really hooks into New News Mechanics of Manifestation module and into the Cosmic Clock module, which comes after this. So I am going to only touch really briefly on the actual workings of the time cycles. But if you are interested in that, the next module would be perfect for you to go to learn all about that. And I'm actually really going to focus especially on how to use the power of the now moment. So then attitudes and responsibilities is really going to be a big part of that. What I would like to do to start out with is, let's just bring our frequency up a little bit by singing the song of Lyra. Okay? Ready? Maharata Kumbai Vectus and Eno Kaium Equilium by Vecti Mahar Vecti Ureon Amor Iseum Zeisa Trasha Hehera Vectate Uma Ashelum Tae Jayanta Doe Shaddai Ue Akumtan Akumtan Shaddai Ue Akumtan Akumtan Shaddai Ue Akumtan. Beautiful. All right. Let's have the next slide. And what we're focusing on a lot in this module is what I'm going to call backflow. And so I'm going to talk about here about where it all starts and what the essence of backflow is. In the body of Source, there was created the very first particle number 1, which was created out of the desire to create. And out of the very center point of that particle, actually a second one, particle number 2, emerges and comes right out from the center of that. And that is created out of both the desire and the intention to create. So this point right here is called the Unisi. It is the central point of all creation. And right at that little point, there is a little crystal, and it also functions as a little doorway between the creation and the entire body of Source. So that what is possible is that when phasing happens and the particle splits into particum and particle, and then that happens millions and billions of times, and the creation gets built up, there remains an opening back into the body of Source so that there can be flow back and forth, and Source can experience the creation, and the creation can experience Source, and they can flow back and forth into and through each other. The creation can be maintained eternally, and it has eternal life, and there is an open two-way communication between all parts of the creation and Source at all times. Now this doorway actually opens specifically at set cycles of time to allow big influxes of new creation energy to come into that creation. Next one. And this is the essence of what backflow is. So that pattern that you saw of that central particle with the particle and the particum created by the phasing, in the center of every single shield, every single sphere, through every level of creation, there is a natural center flame that has that form. And eternal life is created by the process of phasing. So on the cyclings of time, what happens is that those center flames actually get replaced by new units of consciousness coming in from source, and the units of consciousness out of which that flames were made that wish to ascend back into source can do so. And the flames get maintained while that happens. So that by cycling through each other, what happens is that as these units phase together and the part of chi splits into part of cum and part of k, they merge back together and reform that part of chi. Little tiny sparks are created every time that happens, and those build up and grow until they form the full charge of that center flame. And when they have reformed that center flame charge, that flame opens up and allows it to flow back up to source, and then a new flow to come back in. So is that clear so far? Okay. Now we're going to focus a little bit more on manifestation itself and exactly how the creation gets fleshed out. Now we're going to be talking about the manifestation transduction sequence, and it is in the 5 levels of the radial body that they serve as what's called the polarizing lens through which manifestation takes place, and we can perceive the hologram as external and as solid for us. And this manifests around every single one of the harmonic universes, around each one of their Huva bodies. And these are the layers of the radial body, tissue capsule. And it really is a tissue capsule because every single one of these layers, I'd like you to think of as a single unit of consciousness thick. So when we get into the actual now moment, you'll see how important that is. And what happens is that as you assemble your consciousness through the cyclings of time, we have a little seed atom that is a tiny blueprint that gets set in the very center of each shield, in the very center of the creation point. And as time occurs and the cyclings happen and the seed atom phases and sparks are created, those sparks gather together, they accrete on the blueprint, and they start to flesh out the encryption that is the original intention that is held in the seed atom. So you can think of it very much, it's exactly the way like we form as a fetus. There's a single cell, and there's a DNA blueprint. And as we go through all the moments of time, with every single moment of time, we're drawing in energy. And as we draw in energy, that takes form as more cells, and more cells, and more cells. And it's not like our DNA changes. We go from a single cell form to this form, and that is simply fleshing out our DNA imprint, our blueprint, through the cyclings of time. So that when our form is complete, we can see this is what the encryption was, and this is what the intention looks like, subject to free will choice of the consciousness as it's in the creation. So it might not come out exactly according to the original intention, and that's where things get really interesting. Okay. Oh wait, I want to say one more thing about flame body. Sorry. Natural flame body activation happens really naturally on the cyclings of time. And the way that it works is, if this is your harmonic universe 1 body, this is your harmonic universe 2 body, when you have completely assembled this body, this means that you have pulled in through time every single unit of frequency, and you have totally completed the blueprint of your harmonic universe one body. That means you've pulled in all the charge, and everything that is, shall we say, potential has become actual. And at that point, you fill out and you complete the flame capacity of harmonic universe one. And that opens up all these levels of the radial body so that you can open up into the consciousness of harmonic universe two, which has a bigger flame capacity, bigger consciousness capacity. Remembering from Kathara 1, if there's any Kathara 1 people in the class today, as you go up the dimensions, every single dimension holds the consciousness of every single level below it. So dimension 1 has that frequency line. Dimension 2 holds dimension 2 and dimension 1. So it's more than twice as big. And then dimension 3 has dimension 3 and 2 and 1. So your harmonic universe 2 body with dimensions 4, 5, and 6 holds a lot more consciousness, a lot more frequency than your harmonic universe 1 body. So to be in this body, you have to be able to hold all that energy and charge, and you really have to have completed your harmonic universe 1 body to be able to do that. What we're doing right now with our flame body activation is it's really expedited and it's also buffered, because I would say with the status of things on this planet right now, most of us really can't say that we have fully assembled every single unit of consciousness, every single sub-frequency band of every strand of DNA that's in our dimension 1, 2, and 3 body. What that would really mean is that we would have no subconscious. We would be conscious of everything in all those 3 levels of ourself and have full conscious control and mastery over 3 dimensions of consciousness. And I don't think we really have that right now. So our flame body activation is being sort of held in the buffer of the golden fleece field for us, and a lot of step-down gates, so that we can have a flame body, even though we haven't really quite earned a flame body, in a sense. So, yeah.
Could you briefly review if you feel appropriate for now, the layers of the radial body with 5 levels? Or is that too time-consuming?
I can just say that, let's see, when we get into the now moment, we're gonna see those layers more, so we can do that. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of whoosh through the first parts of the transduction sequence, especially for those of you who have been to Nunu's module, and really focus on one particular aspect of it, the now moment aspect. But what happens is that the pulses of primal life force current come into our template from the planetary Merkaba field. So that's where they start to enter our individual Kathara grid. And the Kathara grid template, as I've been working on this time module, is actually really interesting, because I realized that the Kathara grid is sort of in time and sort of in a lot of different times and sort of completely out of time at the same time. It's really kind of confusing. So this is your harmonic universe 1 body, your harmonic universe 2, 3, and 4, and just remembering that as we go up the dimensions, density decreases and the pulsation of time increases. So time gets faster and bigger as you move up these dimensions. And bigger. Okay, so I'd like to think of it as like the size of like a pillar. And you can think of our time wave here as being relatively small and narrow. So think of it as like a pencil. And the time wave then of harmonic universe 2 is going to be wider and longer. It's actually going to go farther into the past and into the future, and it's going to be broader. So it's got more expansiveness to it, and it's got more length to it. Time is actually bigger. So I think the best way to think of it is that there is more consciousness in a unit of time as you go up the dimensional scale. So the way it then feels here when you get that going, when you connect with the faster time cycles, is it actually feels like time is slow because there's so much time in a moment of time. So it feels like time is really big. And there's just plenty of time, which is a feeling I don't think too many of us have very often. So the Cathara grid template, remember that even though the planetary currents are flowing into our Cathara template here, that they actually, because the template connects us with all the different levels of ourselves and all these different times and all these different time-space locations, you could say that the planetary currents that come into our Cathara grid flow not only into our body, but into the bodies of all our other selves at the same time through that Cathara grid. So that the planetary energies are actually connected to and available to every single one of our incarnations. And all the other places that we exist, all those other planets and all those other times, all those pulsations are flowing into us at the same time through our Cathara grid. We don't perceive everything all at once because of the way our template is set up and because we're designed to experience time sequentially and with the smaller time waves first. And then we have enough energy in our form to hold the experience of the bigger time waves. Okay, got it so far? All right, we're doing good? All right, so this is your three-dimensional Kuba body, and this is your tissue capsule radial body, and then outside of that you've got a primal light field, which is also called a parameter field. These are actually created by the spinning of the Cathara grid Merkaba. And this one is 2, only these are horizontal spins, and this one is a vertical spin. So I'm just going to run through what happens quickly, because I want to get to that now moment. But I just want to emphasize with this that we really want to remember that everything that we see in terms of our body and what looks like the external hologram comes right through our template and is manifested through us. But it's also manifested simultaneously through the Cathara grid templates of all the other beings around us and the planet itself, which has a really big template. So that one has the biggest influence in some ways on what we're experiencing as our hologram. So the currents travel first through the DNA-RNA template, which is formed of chelons and chelon codes, then through the axiom lines, which are vertical frequency carrying lines in the body, the auric field, then the chakras, then the meridian lines, and then they finally enter the 5 radial body tissue capsule levels. Then they are translated into what's called a trion Miage field blueprint replica. So there's a replica of that incoming pulse from the planetary Merkaba field. And that stores the blueprint. That's then translated into what's called Mayan and Dayan ionic particulates. And this is where we start getting into the basis of what looks like manifest reality, where things can be atoms and chemicals and particles. Now, as one impulse, one of those little primal life force current impulses, comes all the way into activation in the external hologram, at the exact same time, another pulse is released from the planetary Merkaba. That's called initiating, for the next part of the blueprint. So it's like the next level of frequency of your blueprint, starting out with the smallest frequencies and going to larger and larger and larger frequencies. So each unit of time has a little bit more energy in it, a little bit more consciousness. So you could say that the planetary Cathara grid regulates the rhythms at which these pulses of current are released, and the planet actually releases what's called pulses of time. Now, we will only experience the parts of the unified field that correspond not only to what's in our personal Cathara grid, but it has to also be in the Cathara grid template of the planet and the galaxy and the universe that we're part of. So anything that's not part of that template, we're not going to perceive in our hologram. And we all experience a common planetary reality field and time rhythm because we all, coming onto this planet, agree to adopt the time rhythm of this planet so that we can all co-create together a hologram that we can experience together. So even though we all have our own very individual experience in some ways, there is a commonality to it, and we do share time rhythms because we're on this planet and we agree to all come here together. And I just want to emphasize right now that there is always a continual two-way flow in this transduction sequence. So there's always energy coming in, and at the same time, there's energy flowing out. One way to think of the hologram and of evolution and growth of the form and growth of your consciousness is to think of it as when it starts, when that creation is just set in motion, or when you as an individual just gets sparked and you're set in motion. It's like there is undifferentiated frequency in the unified field around you that's not yet drawn into any form. It's not part of a template yet. And what happens over the cycles of time is that all those little undifferentiated units actually get pulled into a template and manifested so that at the end of that cycle of time, for that level of being, all of the energy that's available is now manifested in the form. It's in the blueprint. And instead of being just all undifferentiated, now it's a complete form, and you can see exactly what you've created with that. Yeah.
I'm wondering, if you look at that, the dots, the portion on the right side, in the column on the right side, makes me think about, perceiving different timelines. And then I had that occurred to me that I was perceiving different timelines, but it seemed like it was always like it just came up and I couldn't kind of direct it. I couldn't say, now I want to see another lifetime or whatever. So what makes that bleedful, you call that? That you see another lifetime or another timeline?
That's a complicated question. I think there's probably a lot of different reasons why that pops up. I mean, that I think that's really individual.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you know, all your timelines are connected through your Cathara grid. And you have that available to you if you've got the frequency in your system that you can activate that. So I just think it's really individual, that it's kind of like a frequency occurrence. You know, something happened for you that you had that energy, that you were able to access that part of yourself, which always exists at every moment, but you can't always have the energy to be fully aware of it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So I had to use one of Ash's little hand-drawn things because I'm not capable of doing this kind of thing on the computer myself. So these are my limitations. So the linear time experience, which, well, let me back up just a little bit, because of course time moving really is actually an illusion. What we're doing is moving ourselves through a blueprint which includes space and time as part of its program. So it looks like we're moving through space, and it looks like we're changing our density levels, and it looks like we're moving through time and evolving, but it's really all occurring at the same time. But when you're here, it sure looks real, and that experience of everyone on a specific planet is synchronized into specific time cycles. They're called continua, and they're all connected through the DNA template. Every single time continuum is a single time wave, and they are always progressively accelerating. So even when we're not in a leap cycle, which we are in right now, the time wave in a single time cycle always does accelerate. And I'll see if I can explain why. It's kind of like when you're starting with this center point here, and you are just starting with, it's like the very first sub-frequency band of dimension 1, which is a really little unit of consciousness. So you get that fleshed out in the hologram, and it's this little tiny thing. Then the next sub-frequency band is a little bigger, and the next one is a little bigger than that. And it keeps on going where each one gets larger and larger and larger, so that the size of this spiral actually accelerates as you're moving through the time cycle, just because of the way the dimensions are structured and the fact that each sub-frequency contains the one that's below it. Does that make sense? Okay.
It's picking up more energy as you go.
Yes, yes. And it's not just like linear, it gets faster and faster.
Like that picture.
Yeah. So finally we get to the point where the reality field flashes on. So we've got our primal life force currents that have gone all the way through all these different steps. They've come through the radial body. They've turned into Myon-Dion field, and then they start to translate themselves and step down into subatomic and atomic particles and antiparticles. And we get actual molecules and chemicals and elements. That's when the body flashes on into manifest existence, and the pulse of consciousness continues to expand through and beyond the body image out into what you experience as the world around you, containing the elements that are in your template that then translate as perceivable experience that is around you. And so that flashing on is always coordinating itself and interacting with the flashing on of the planet that we live on and of all the other beings that are around us. And this is the now moment. So this is also called the Eron point, or the Eros, and it's got a whole bunch of other great names. The Eros, conscious breathing life force stream, the breath of God, the living Holy Spirit, and the stream of consciousness. And this now moment is your present moment of creation power. So this exact moment is when you have the power to exercise your free will choice in terms of manifestation of this moment and the next moment. So the now moment actually encompasses, it's the point where your mental body, which is where your consciousness is now, what you are perceiving, what you're thinking, everything that you are aware of, where that intersects with the Miage field inner layer of the radial body. And let's go to the next one. With this now moment, you can have a really tremendous range of choices, and we'll get into that more when we talk about timelines. But you are limited in terms of your creation power to what is possible and available within the planet. And you can't just, shall we say, create any moment in time from any other moment in time. You are restricted to the way that the time cycles themselves operate. And when we're talking about moving the planet in particular from, shall we say, one timeline to another timeline, that can only occur during a stellar activation cycle. So when we're in this manifestation, we're restricted by the time cycles in terms of exactly what we can do frequency-wise. So this is the outgoing moment. So this is the pulse of the now moment that starts to move backwards through the transduction sequence, back towards the planetary Merkaba field. And you could say it's going in, back towards source. This is flowing out into the hologram. This is a replica of that moment that was left in the Miage field. So the outgoing one goes right through there, and the incoming one also goes through that same point. Now remembering that these are like 1 unit wide. This is like a single unit of consciousness. This is a single unit of consciousness. And the incoming one is a little bit bigger, so it picks up the imprint of this as it moves through it, and it's larger than it, so it carries this program plus more in forward sequence. And this, as it's moving back out, now carries it in backwards reverse sequence. And those two pulses, one in forward sequence and one in reverse sequence, interact with each other right exactly at that now point.
I'm trying to create an analogy to help myself to understand this process better. And what's coming to me is a circulatory system of the blood flowing to the heart. The heart is the center point. So there's an inflow and an outflow circulation system happening all the time. Is that a safe analogy or comparison to this? Or not?
In a way it is, but it goes beyond that, because what's actually going to happen is even better than that. Because we're talking about creating a spark point. And what's going to happen is that we're going to have those two things collide merge with each other and form like a particle unit that is going to transmute. So that actually creates something bigger and better. Yeah.
Couldn't it be almost like taking a picture? Taking a picture, a photo, they come together, and then that picture of them coming together moves into the hologram.
No, it's the point where we have the past picture and the future picture actually blend together. Yeah, I know, it's really...
In one moment.
In one moment.
So the past picture is the initial one.
Yes.
And then that goes out.
Mm-hmm.
Then it meets with the orange one is the second one.
Yes.
So and then they come together in the middle.
Yes.
So that spark would be a choice point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. See, we're
She
getting
says it's a
it.
choice point.
It's a choice point.
Yes, this is the now moment, and this is why the now moment is so cool. Yeah.
But that would be to say that the past moment influences the future moment.
Yep.
It does.
And the future influences the past. And basically, the real thing is that the now influence goes both ways. So the now moment, actually, its influence radiates out and goes backwards and forwards. So you can actually change the past from the present moment.
So what you're saying, okay,
Going on this is helping me because linear time is our perceptual filter and is not the actual way it occurs because everything is part of that now moment. And
Yes.
it's much more fluid than that.
Yes, and I'm also going to tie that into flame body, so I think that's going to be really cool. Okay, so what happens is that those two, we've got sequence and anti-sequence, and because, one's basically in a trion form and one's in a meage form, they act like particum and particule. They fuse, they merge and transmute, and they completely demanifest, turn into a Merkaba field, and pop up in harmonic universe 2. So they go up a level. Because every time you have particum and particule join together, they always pop up a level because a particule is bigger. It's actually twice as big in consciousness as the polarized units. So whenever you get that phasing coming together, you're always popping up to the next level. So every single moment in time that we experience here goes on to manifest in our own density 2 body. And that's one of the ways in which all of our selves are connected to each other. They were like totally flowing into each other at every single flash on, flash off moment in time. And this is synchronized through all 4 levels of your Cathara grid, harmonic universe 1, 2, 3, and 4 bodies. This is happening in a synchronized way, back and forth every moment.
So if that pops up into the next, you said it's the next density, that affects us how? Results in what?
Well, it basically means that the choices that you're making and the consciousness that you hold in this second right now are then available to you and become part of your soul body. So then that's like a moment in time for your soul body. It's like the substrate on which you form your consciousness there. So it's part of your memory there, and it's part of your body.
But that helps us manifest in density 1, doesn't it? Because it overrides density 1, it's bigger energy.
It doesn't override because all of ourselves have free will
I don't mean
choice.
to override, but I mean, how then does that relate to manifesting in this density level? I guess that's my question.
The density 2 one?
No, it goes to density 2, but if, say, we do a manifestation technique in this hologram here, but usually I ask to manifest mastership qualities. But, if you do, then I think the mastership quality, for instance, could manifest here if it's manifesting at a soul level, because the soul level incorporates these levels, like you're saying. So it would manifest here too, because you carry those, as you said, up to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, and all of those are totally interconnected every single second in terms of that cathartic grid template, because they're all merging with each other. Yeah. Okay. Next one. And then we get the point where here reality flashes off really briefly. Now this is happening really fast, and the speed at which it's happening is directly related to the time wave that we are manifesting on. So the speed that it happens here is going to be different than the speed that it happens in our harmonic universe 2 body, etc. So it's flashing on and off really fast, so fast that we don't perceive it.
Does the speed equate to different frequency levels?
Yeah,
Okay.
and different dimensions, different densities of consciousness. So just for a second, or a nanosecond, or less than a nanosecond, we're not there. And then the first pulse goes farther out of the transduction sequence, and I forget where it goes. You know, we'd have to trace back in terms of the transduction sequence. It goes into the meridian lines or the chakras, etc., every step backwards through that cycle. And then the pulse 2 flashes on its blueprint into manifestation. And because this one is bigger than the one that was before it, we perceive a growth, a movement forward, a progression in time. And we still have the memory of pulse 1 that's held in our radial body. And I guess as part of, you know, just the way that always works, just in terms of the phasing process itself, when we have party chi and it splits into party cum and party k, so those are flashing on into manifestation. They fuse, they flash off and become a party chi. That party chi is always a little bigger than the party chi that it was before. So it's the same, it has the same encryption, it has the same identity, but its program is expanded by the experience of the party cum and the party k units during that tiny moment that they flashed on. So the party chi themselves are always actually growing and expanding. All right, so as we flash off here in density 1, we flash on in density 2, and like I said, that is synchronized between all of your density level selves, and that's one of the ways that cohesion of identity and linking of those multidimensional selves is maintained. The flash off point is an in-breath, and the flash on is an out-breath. So there are many, many different levels of that kind of breathing, and you can think of all of the time cycles as different sizes of in-breaths and out-breaths. So you can think of the inhale as going back in towards source, and the out-breath comes out into the manifest hologram. So we've got this kind of thing that happens on a microscopic level, you know, zillions of times a second. And then we've got the big time cycles where a single inhale can take billions of years, and a single exhale can take billions of years. Now, our Maharic shield holds the imprint for individuality, and the human species shield holds the imprint for what is called probability. This allows new programs of probable creation to be added to our cathara grids. So programs that were not necessarily part of the original encryption can be added into the Cathara grid within a certain limit, within a certain tolerance. So we've got some level of creative variation on the original divine blueprint. Free will choice is part of the Christiac blueprint. But the ability in particular to choose new timelines that are not part of the current planetary program, at least is my understanding of one of the most important parts of planetary stewardship and the purpose of humans being on this planet. That is that since the fall of Terra, Earth has not held within itself the shield of Aramatena, its own Maharic imprint that lost its connection to that shield. So that part of the human mission is to restore that shield. And it can only be done during stellar activation cycles. We'll see more how that functions, but basically humans are here partly to have the use of our free will choice to bring the planet into a different timeline than its current Cathara grid is actually capable of holding. So free will choice and probability is absolutely essential to creating something brand new that isn't possible in a creation that is damaged. Is that clear? Okay.
Can you just speak a bit about that second point about creative variation of the original being allowed in certain limits?
Okay.
Being what, the laws of mechanics of...
Yes, yes. The ultimate choice point, shall we say the line in the sand, is at the level of the intersection of the universal and the cosmic Cathara grids. So that free will choice is allowed up to the point at which the blueprint itself could sustain irreparable damage. And at that point, we hit override. So I was talking before about how through the cyclings of time naturally, as we have, zillions of those little flashing on and flashing off moments, you start to pull frequency into the blueprint, and you start with little tiny frequencies, and then those accelerate and get bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally filled out your whole harmonic universe oneself, at which point your radial body really activates, you get your flame body, and you can merge up into your density 2 self. So I wanted to think a little bit about the now moment in the flame body, because my sense of that is that the way that it works is that the size of your now moment is directly related to activation of the flame body. And that what we're talking about with a density 1 flame body, ideally, is that your consciousness fully encompasses your density 1 blueprint. And every single frequency within yourself is turned on, it's active, it's available for manifesting. And every single one of those little points is included in your now moment. Because remember, that now moment is where that D3 mental body intersects with your radial body. So I just want people to kind of think a little bit about what it might be like to actually have that really activated, and to feeling like you are so completely here and so activated and so turned on that every single frequency within yourself is part of your now moment, and that you feel completely at one with everything that you perceive in your external hologram that is part of you, because it's part of your consciousness, which is your mental body, You are at one with that. It is you, you are it, and it's available for manifestation. That's your now moment. So when Ash talks about everything happening in the now, kind of like in a real technical way, sort of geeky way of looking at this, you know, for me, it's like every single level of flame body that activates increases the size of your now moment. And in a sense, we could kind of say, you know, going all the way up into your now is the whole Veka. Your now moment is an entire Eka-Veka system. And can you imagine your consciousness being that big, that, like, you are the Eka-Veka? Well, God's flame body is the whole thing, from the Akasha Aya and up on down. So it is true. That is the now moment for Source. And everything in that flame body is completely available to Source, whose consciousness. And it is totally aware of every single thing in that creation at every single moment. So we can really, I think, use that idea in our own flame body activation and in the choices that we're making in all of our now moments, because we have the free will choice to do things which are going to rapidly increase the size of our consciousness. And, well, we're on definitely an acceleration cycle, so let's go into the next topic and see some more about that. Okay. So, genetic time codes. So this is just a diagram of your 12-strand blueprint. Every single strand of DNA has a strand of base codes and a strand of acceleration codes represented by these two little circles. And between every single strand is what's called a fire code, represented by these little Merkaba forms. And the fire codes activate in response to opening planetary star crystal seals or manually opening the kitchen. Manually opening the star crystal seals in your body. Now, the star crystal seals are the ones that are in between your chakras. So what those are is, you know, they're little crystals that hold the program of half the dimension below and half the dimension above. So they would normally activate in any stellar activation cycle when all the dimensions, the Merkabas for all the dimensions start to line up together and all the frequencies from all the dimensions flow into each other and totally line up. Because the star crystal seals control the angle of the Merkabas for each dimension, and that's the angle at which your particles spin. It's the axis on which your particles spin. So when those start opening up, the axis of your particles starts to blend and merge with the axis of other dimensions, so those can become one single unit of consciousness. So, not surprisingly, these fire codes are called genetic time codes because they allow all the different time cycles of yourself to blend, and your incarnate one time cycles can join with your soul time cycles, your oversoul time cycles, and your avatar time cycles. And the way that it actually works is that the acceleration codes of a particular strand fuse with the base codes of the strand above it. So we get that particule, particum fusion turning into partikai. And when that happens with the whole template, it completes with the acceleration code of strand 12 actually loops all the way under and hooks to the base code of strand 1. So it's one complete unit the whole thing turns into Partakai form, turns into light, flashes off, demanifests, and you go wherever you want, which sounds pretty cool. So it is during the stellar activation cycles when all these Merkabas line up with each other, that's when all the time cycles line up with each other and flow into each other. That's when the big time shifts are possible. And that's when a planetary time shift is possible. Okay. So here we're getting more into what are we going to do with that now moment and how are we going to, activate our choices. I'm going to take my watch off and keep track of time. Okay, so probability timelines. These are a set of 12 experiential manifestations that arise out of singular events, and they're structured exactly like dimensions with a blueprint of 12 probabilities. And we're dealing primarily with 2 different sizes of these in our current time cycle. Some of these are based on subharmonics, and these arise out of what are called key events. And those timeline sets are called Rouchet-A probability lines.